Morrison,
Yes.
Dan Ormsby,
Here.
and Mark Eastman. First item of business, fee ordinance update.
Hello. Yeah, it's a fee maintenance update for the marina and the town dock. The last updates to these facilities were in 2017. We're requesting an 8% increase across the boards, not $50 each, 8%. So everybody's increase is going the same percentage rate up. So, for example, that would make it at the, and this is for the marina only, at the A docks, it was $920. It'd be $1,000. The B docks were $1,620, would be $1,770, and the C docks, which are your 40-foot and larger boats, was $2,320. That would be $2,520. It would then, in turn, affect the monthly dockage rates. The overnight transient rates would go up a quarter per foot, so from $1.50 for boats up to 40 feet to $1.75. Boats over 40 feet from $1.75 to $2. And then on the town dock rates, the cruise ships were paying $2 a foot. We're proposing $3 a foot. Trash removal, we're keeping the same at $2.50 a bag. And other than that, those are basically the changes that we're looking for. And it's been 5 years. We've made some updates. We need to continue with upgrades to keep the facilities going.
Yep. Any questions?
Just a quick one.
Go ahead, Peter.
How do you guys figure the fuel costs?
We buy the fuel from whoever you guys get the bid in.
Yeah.
And then we price it accordingly, what each load we get compared to what load is left in the tank, and we do it out that way. So
So we're getting it at our rack price, and then
Yeah.
you're charging.
No,
so
no,
much
we're,
per-
no, we're different. We're not rack price.
You're not rack price. You pay taxes on this. This
yeah,
is
we
a
pay
resale.
the taxes on the gasoline.
Oh, that's right.
So,
yeah.
because we're not, you still have
No,
to
you're right.
sell road
Yeah.
tax
Yeah.
over the gasoline.
Yeah.
The diesel, we tax it as 5.5%.
Yeah.
So that's how it's done out. And we add in our margin
That's what I was wondering.
after
Is
we
it-
get the load.
60
Each
cents for
load's
transient.
different.
How much?
It's 60 cents for transient, 50 cents for
Okay.
marina customers.
That's what I was wondering. Is that been consistent though all the way through? And
Since Mike's been here, that's how we've done it.
We try not to change it. If we get a load that's a few cents different from the last load, we try to leave the price the same. If we're making a little less money, sometimes we're making a little more money. So
Okay.
it's right around that.
Okay.
Yep.
Any other questions for Rich? We don't need to vote on it. It's just an update.
This is on the council agenda tonight for a first reading, and then you would have the second and the public hearing on any of the items on this agenda that you move forward. It's the consensus of this committee that this fee schedule be moved forward, that the marina and dock fees be moved forward. You probably should make some sort of record of the fact that you supported it, which is how it gets.
Yep.
Okay.
Fair enough.
So make a motion to support the rates.
Okay.
Second.
All in favor?
Thank you.
Thanks, Rich. Item B is update to town code. Chapter 6.
I should note that there will be more changes coming to the fee schedule, but it was important that these get done now before the season. But Jake and I and Rich are working on other fees, and we're also talking about the animal control officer. We're looking at all the fees, and then we'll be bringing that to you. But this was important to get it done now. So we're starting with Chapter 6?
Yep.
Okay. So we've basically had a committee of me, Rich, Deputy Chief Winchester, Director Gagan, Deputy Chief Denning, Mike Ormsby, who am I forgetting? And Jay. I knew there was more. And we've been discussing the whole festival application and the rules. And there was a lot of stuff missing, basically, that especially public safety wanted to see, but that we all wanted to see. So we all had different ideas and stuff, so we sat down, we hashed it all out, and this is what we've come up with. So I don't know if you want to go through it point by point, or how do you want to do this? Have you all read it?
I've read it.
But may-
I've skimmed through it.
Okay, so,
I mean, it's really almost a total rewrite, or
Well-
addition, there are a lot of additions.
yeah, we didn't take much out, we just added stuff for the most part. There's very little cross out, I think. We added a lot of information about public safety having the rights to approve and deny based on, their personal, if they feel something's unsafe or whatnot, they can shut it down. It was already policy that the Economic Development Committee review it, but it wasn't in this, so people didn't understand that. So now it's written in here so they know. This little thing, like it said, the requirements of section 1.6, well, that still applies, but we wanted it to make sure it included all of this, so we just did this chapter, just a little language thing. Then, where it really gets the meat and potatoes is the, where it says the fire chief will determine how many personnel are needed. Right now, the application simply has a checkbox that says, do you require public safety? And most people just go, nope. Well, it's not up to them to determine. I mean, I'm sure they'd like it to be, but, so that language is in there saying that the public safety has the right to determine what's needed based on the event. And then it also says that they have the right to call in more if the event, for instance, the ship that was here, nobody knew or expected that kind of attendance. So, in a situation like that, they could call in more, and the organizer of the event understands that they're responsible for that cost.
Just real quick on that, the question I had on that, do you guys have a matrix or anything that you may go by?
Say again.
Do you have a matrix or anything you may go by on determining, what I hope happens is that we're consistent, that if one group comes in and they've got 50 people, and the next group comes in and whatever that event is has 50 people, that we're not going by the event, are we going by the people, or how are we looking at it?
Really, the event, it depends on the event, any opposition, what the event's about, whether it's new, whether it's been around for a while. So we'll do an investigation on it. If there's no opposition, then we may not need anyone, and the patrol guys, okay, can check on it. Or if there is, or there's gonna be a number of people, then they want one or two guys.
And I was just, is there a,
We can do a threat assessment on each event.
I don't know if I'd call it a threat assessment, but if we had just that, we will determine through a matrix or something that you guys have internally that really don't need to say, but it seemed kind of vague on, you just didn't want it to come up that one person's doing one and one's doing another, and so you got the same number of people, but for the reasons you guys have determined, we may need to have an extra officer, and I didn't really, if there's a way to kind of spell that out without being too spelly. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, it's just that one event might be 50 ladies quilting.
Yes, sir, if someone says they're gonna have 50, they could have 200.
And that should be your prerogative at that point, then to pull something just like the boat thing, right?
Right, but everyone will be treated equally, depending on the situation and.
So most like events, if they're 50, they're 50, they're 50, you're going to base your number off on like events or past events or things like that.
As long as it's not a riot versus a...
We have no
Quilting.
riots in Bucksport.
You had a question?
Yeah, I would just
Yeah.
2.310. Says-
Yep, hadn't got that far yet, but yep.
Okay, do you
Go
want,
ahead.
I can wait if you want when we get down there.
Yep, okay.
That's fine. I'll wait till you're going through.
So we had the language underneath that, that nonprofit organizations will be provided one police officer and 2 firefighters/EMS personnel at no charge. So that's the town trying to help out when it's, a nonprofit. If it's not a huge event, obviously at some point they had to kick in. So after those 3 people extra personnel would be called in. Nonprofits would be billed for all the personnel, and they would be billed at the rate set forth in the union contract for overtime. Then we put in language about trash collection and removal. If they want to take care of it themselves, that's great. If they want the waterfront people to do it, and we're asking Ron or whoever is in that position to come in on a Saturday or Sunday to do that, they're going to pay the overtime rate for his time doing that. And we said the trash would be the same fee, basically the same thing, the ships, the $2.50 a bag.
The only question I had that wasn't in there was a time limit
Time limit of
removing the trash. You know, you want to have it gone within 12 hours at the end of the event, 24 hours at the end of the event.
yeah, we put language in like that about the porta potties, but we
Porta-potties,
didn't
right.
about the trash.
Right.
So we can add something like that. That's a good catch. Probably should be immediately upon the event, end of the event.
I would like to see that, yeah. I know Mike and those guys would too, probably. On a windy day, that could float around pretty bad, so. Or seagulls.
Okay.
Thanks.
You know, that's a good catch. So then there's language in there about if they're using the public bathrooms, they may need to pay for staff for stocking toilet paper, paper towels, and cleaning and that kind of thing. But we would encourage people to use bring in porta potties if it's a big event, and that needs to be coordinated with us, where they're going to put them and when they're going to put them and when they're going to take them out. Then you get to what Dan was asking about, the no event will take place or obstruct access to the town marina or the associated parking lot.
So my question on that is, are we backing ourselves into a corner if, by saying no event shall take place there, can we have like a, if approved, or, because I know we've had events out there where we've actually used that parking lot in front of the marina to have things there.
I know we have in the past, but we don't want to do that anymore, because was our thinking is that the people pay a lot of money to use that marina, and we don't want to make it difficult for them to get down there with their cars and unload their gear, or unload passengers and all that kind of thing. So that was our thinking.
What if it, as a suggestion, said that from June 1st to, we've got the parking lot,
May 15th to October 15th.
yeah, May
we
15th
talked
to
about
October
that.
15th.
It's just that all the docks are stored in the parking lot outside of that, short of like a week or two in between. So I didn't.
Yeah, no, I was
personally-
just,
You know, we thought of that, we talked about it, but if you have an event down there and all the docks are stacked there, then you got potential people climbing on them or whatever. I just didn't think that was a good idea, but.
that's probably true. I was just thinking that the marina used to have events down there, that when Bill Chandler was here, they had concerts over at the Flag Point and did those kind of things, and the marina is the one that did that. And so if nothing can happen there, the town can't do it either.
Right.
Just
Well, that
seems
was the
very
intent.
absolute. There will be no, that's it. So now we're back in.
And we've had past events where people were using that, and it was somewhat of a safety issue. You know, they're using the access to that parking lot, but it was a safety issue for the walkway. How would we address?
You gotta look at it down the road. The marina's getting bigger, it's growing. The customers, you know, as good as they are about it, they already had one whole weekend, they couldn't bring their vehicles down there. It wasn't on the 4th of July weekend either, so, you know, and so they have to park somewhere else. It is a pretty large inconvenience. And then you have other events, oh, I want to be down there too, I want to be down there too. And what happens is you end up really disturbing what goes on at the marina, when that parking lot really should be for the boaters that are there, that rent their spaces, that, you know, take their guests out, that, you know, and it just, I don't mind events. Have as many events down as you want, but don't close us off, you know? They'll have to, certain events have to post somebody at the walkway and make sure no one, you know, that doesn't happen, you know, and in fact, your wife did that on one of the, art festivals.
Yeah.
She had her table there, and she kind of watched things as cars came up and down, so, you know.
It seems like it would make it easier too, just an enforcement. You know, there's nothing as bad as a policy you can't enforce. If we keep it simple,
Yeah.
and we say, you know, the marina is closed. I mean, using the marina parking lot, that option is just not on the table.
Yeah, which, basically on that, we're talking about the marina parking lot,
Right.
not the town dock parking.
Right.
Okay, which is where most events are held. It's just that they've been getting a little bit more spread out lately because people want to use the
Yeah.
walkway and set up tents and
Yep.
things,
And
so.
I think limiting the people pulling in and out of there is good anyway. But
Well,
yeah,
and we'd
it
like
just seems
to,
like
we'd like to see people go more towards Spring
Right.
Point,
Yep.
use that green space. We're hoping that those rails will get ripped out of there soon, and
And that'd be more advantageous to them.
yeah, then they can go that way, spread out that way. But we also put language in here about the town dock and the fact that its primary purpose is for the dock. And so if a ship comes in, or if there's private yachts that come in or whatever, and they're parked there, and there's an event going on, the event organizer has to understand that if and I don't mean, I used this example the other day, you know, Jim Bob wants to eat a sandwich down there, no. But if somebody needs to get a vehicle down there to unload gear into their boat, or if a cruise ship comes and they have a bus, that takes priority over this event. And
This is a great problem to have. I mean, because we've got a lot of activity going on down there, and we're having to come up with some safety guidelines and guidelines in order to use this space. I think what you guys are doing is the absolute right thing. We're not going to be able to please everybody for everything here.
That's
And
exactly
right.
I think looking
well,
at what
so
you guys
we
have come up with
encourage
is-
Pride to relocate, and they don't want to, and I said that's perfectly fine. You don't have to, but you have to understand these are the guidelines that if you use that space, if the police or the harbor master feel they need to temporarily pause your event so they can get something through, you're going to have to be understanding of that. If they are, then
He,
And you approved the license.
wrote a letter afterwards that, he said that he was careful when he looked at the cruise ship schedule, and they planned the event not on a cruise ship weekend. Our cruise ship schedule is just our regular stops. We turned down 7 overnight cruise ships last year because we had private yachts on the dock, because they call us all the time. And they have regularly scheduled stops, plus they have on-call stops. Like the weather's too bad, they can't get to Bar Harbor, and they want to come in here. And a lot of our money comes that way, you know, and I hate to turn down, you know, $1,100 for a couple nights stay, you know, because they didn't want to bring a bus down or whatever, you know, let the people off. So I think we can work together with these events, you know?
Yeah.
And I don't have any problem with having events down on the marina, on the dock parking lot or whatever else, as long as we can work together, and if something happens like that, we can get a bus in and out of there, you know, with some of their help and ours.
So we did have an incident, one of the last Bay Festivals, where we did not allow the buses, and we had an accident up on Main Street because we did not allow the buses down to the cruise ship.
No, like I said, I think you guys have done a great job looking at all the scenarios that a lot of people may not think about when they're looking. They're focused on their one thing, and I think you guys have gone and looked at it as a whole, and you have to plan for these contingencies. And there are going to be some things that don't pop up, and we've got to trust the staff that we have to be able to make a decision. I mean, that's the way I would think that we have to run it.
Yeah, I think the Santa Maria was handled pretty well once that came in. We didn't realize what a ruckus it was caused, but it you know, worked out fine.
Right.
Jake talked with Maine Municipal, and we found that our requirement of $400,000 insurance was not adequate. They recommended that we have no less than $1 million. So we have changed that to $1 million per occurrence that they have to show proof of, and we have to be named as additionally insured. So 2.8, public entertainment, is almost identical to 2.3. One thing that's different is under, it said public entertainment licenses are not required for charitable, educational, religious, or fraternal organizations. I put in that the exception is limited just to that organizer's property. Didn't want people to think that they didn't have to get a license or permission from you guys to have an event on the waterfront because they're a nonprofit or whatever. And then notice of parade has to be given to the public safety director. Oh, I thought we took public safety director out of there. I was supposed to.
You gotta do something.
So what do we want? We want a deputy chief?
It was deputy chief.
Yeah, okay. 60 days prior to the parade. Currently says 1 week. And that is not enough time to have staff ready and plans made and questions asked and all that.
So on these dates, and we know how it happens that, you know, somebody wins a championship or they want to do something that is a quicker notice. Do we have the ability to have exceptions in this for?
I don't think that's technically considered a parade, because we're not shutting down the road.
Okay.
The parade basically is shutting down all the intersections.
Is that what we're calling a parade, is a shutdown so they can have, okay, okay, okay.
I think that's it for that one. Unless you have any more questions.
I do, and this just came up, I'm sorry.
It's fine.
But for parade, there are two types of parades you can have. You can have one on the road, but you can also have a boat parade. And that's going to be coming up for Bay Festival. She's going to not want to do a parade, but want to do a boat parade now.
I
Jurisdiction.
was gonna say, I don't think that would be us.
So we're leaving that up to the harbor master then?
I think you're gonna leave that up to the Marine Patrol or the Coast Guard.
Coast Guard.
Deputy Chief, you're not requesting boats and things like that?
No, he's not. No, Rich, I honestly think though that is out of our jurisdiction to manage.
Okay.
Still good for them to let us know so that we can have
Well, yeah, in the
people
harbor,
prepared.
in the harbor master, and if they go anywhere else, you know, generally the Coast Guard doesn't.
Oh, the Coast Guard is the wrong answer, yeah.
What's the pleasure of the group?
With this one, will you make changes? Can we bring it forward, or does it need to?
You're going for the first reading, so you're accepting the
Okay.
changes in the first reading, and
Okay,
then,
so we just need a motion.
Make a motion to accept the changes in the first reading. Move it forward to the first reading.
nope, we'll go forward to we'll have the first reading today,
Right.
and then we'll bring it forward for a public hearing and second reading.
Okay, so you want to do that again?
So make a motion to send
Send this ordinance.
this
Recommend.
ordinance forward
Council.
to the council.
There you go.
Second.
All in favor?
Just make a motion.
I know. So moved.
So moved.
So next one is yard sale.
Yep.
So I am going to be running this by the planning board next week at our meeting, but it's really pretty basic and straightforward. So what you see at the top was the current definition in our ordinance of yard sale. The one below it is what I'd like to change it to. This is something that's used, this particular definition is used in multiple town ordinances that I looked at around. And I think the reason that they put in the sale of more than 5 items is so that if somebody puts a washing machine out by the road for sale, it doesn't have to be taken in after 2 days. Not that we want them sitting there for weeks on end, but that's not a yard sale. That's somebody selling a certain thing. But then, so we put the definition in there of basically covered all our bases with barn, garage, moving whatever. And then it just says that no yard sale may be conducted for more than 3 consecutive days. I'm open to 4 if you think that's necessary, but usually Friday, Saturday, Sunday is pretty much the gist of it. And it's not like if they have it for 4 days, I'm going to be banging on their door, but it's up to you guys.
That seems adequate.
Yeah.
No person, firm, corporation, or other entity may conduct more than 3 yard sales from any location in more than 1 calendar year. And that's basically so that they aren't having one every weekend, and, you know, it's really a home business that they're calling a yard sale. No merchandise may be placed on public way. All merchandise must be displayed sufficient distance for, you know, keep things safe. Unsold yard sale merchandise remaining on site at the conclusion of the yard sale, to include items sold to purchasers, must be removed from the site within 24 hours. And then the property owner or person conducting the yard sale must assume responsibility for parking. I think there's something in there about law enforcement officials or town officials may immediately suspend. So if they're doing it on a corner somewhere and it's chaos and it's dangerous, the police chief can say, yeah, you got to stop for today until you find a way to do this safely. So again, it's not our goal to stop them. It's just we want to make sure it's safe. And that has happened a couple times. I had to stop one in Orland once, right on the hill going into the village. There was cars parked everywhere, and it was, you come over the hill and there's all this people. But that basically, and you know why this is happening. It's because of Noel Way and the perpetual yard sale that's over there, and we are going after him. The lawyer's working on that, but this gives us a little more teeth and a little bit more to stand on. So, any thoughts, questions, changes you'd like to see?
The only thing I would ask or think about is the number per year.
Yep.
You know, if you think about when folks, if somebody has one once a month, because they are just trying to have a yard sale, because that's what we do in the state of Maine. And if you went for six yard sales, you went from April to October. You know, if somebody decided they wanted to use all 6 of theirs in a 6-week time frame, that's fine. But there are folks that I think like to do yard sales. I know there's issues with some that like to really do yard sales, but you know, once a month or throughout the course of the summer when the weather's nice, sitting out there and having people come by, and I think 3 just seems very limiting to me.
I think the group at Wardlow's does more than 3 a year, and that's like families, multiple families getting together.
I have no problem with 6.
Yeah, me either.
Yeah, especially when we're talking the garage sale variety. If someone has a fairly good sized garage and it's cleaned out, and it's almost like they built it to have these yard sales, and we're limiting them to 3 a year. I can't think of anything specific offhand, but it just seems like that could be, to your point, Mr. Mayor, a little limiting. I see your intent here, and I
It's
see why.
fine by me, as long as they're taking it in at the end of 3
Well,
days.
and that's why I say
bringing
you've
it
got the
back.
other rules in
Yeah.
here
Yeah.
that keep that enforcement action going.
Right.
You know,
Okay.
so that I applaud that, and that's what made me think of it is, okay, you've said now that it has to be removed at the end of the sale, so.
Right.
um,
So like a garage sale wouldn't matter, you could close
Close
that
the
up.
door,
But
right.
Yeah.
when it's out on the front lawn.
Yep.
And if it's pulled off, then really do we care if they have one every weekend, if every other rule is being observed?
They would basically entitle them to 18 days of yard sales in a year. 6 times the 3 days, if that
Yeah.
was the maximum, so
Sure.
that would,
And if they
The
fit a
only-
building like that and they want to do it more than that, they can get a home occupation
Yep.
permit, which is $25. And
but there's no permit associated with this.
no, there's no permit
Right.
associated with this, so it's not like I'm going to be out there keeping track either.
I was
but
going to
at
say,
the
how
same
are we
time-
going to know?
Yeah.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6?
No, I won't know unless a neighbor calls me and says,
Complaints.
look, they've been having a yard sale for 2 months straight, can you do something about it? And that's when I'll know.
Yeah.
And these will present themselves, it's like the one that you're dealing with.
Oh, yeah.
You know, that, I think for 99% of the folks that want to have a yard sale, they're going to do it the right way, and then the ones that present
Yeah.
themselves will. But it just gives you a little teeth to work with.
Pleasure of the council.
Dan, you got one?
Make a motion to move forward Appendix K on yard sales.
Second.
All in favor?
All right, so the next one is somewhat confusing. I'll give you my basic rundown. I've talked to a lot of people, I've read a lot of minutes, I've watched old town council meetings. My basic understanding and thinking is that in 2011, when this was added, there was no opt-in language allowed. So it was allowed by state law, and if towns didn't regulate where or when it could be, so it was added in there, and we had medical marijuana dispensaries put in. Later in 2017, the state passed recreational marijuana, which, when the ordinance was written, the person that wrote it used the word retail marijuana instead of recreational marijuana. And that was based on the current state definition or something. But so that can be a little confusing because it says retail, and medical marijuana dispensary is retailing the product, but it's not recreational, it's medical. So that's the difference. So in 2017, the retail came up. The council voted unanimously, no, we don't want that. And so that's why there's X's all the way across the board there. It wasn't until about a year later, in 2018, that the legislature passed a law saying that the town had the right to opt in to, and you couldn't put a marijuana store, medical marijuana store, in a town unless they'd opted in. And so, but if you already had language in your ordinance that allowed it, then you essentially were opting in. And for whatever reason, we never did anything, addressed it or whatnot, and that's the way it's been. And it hasn't been a problem. And I'm not against or for, I don't really care, but as you know, I'm code officer in Verona and Orland, and they both have them, and there hasn't been a single problem that I'm aware of, with the possible exception of people running across the street in the dark over here. But now that it's over where the old Rise and Shine was, no problem. But I don't know that we necessarily want that on Main Street.
But by doing this, we're just removing the language to bring us back to where we'd opt in.
It would mean that we don't allow it, and if somebody called me and asked if they could put one in, I would say we have not opted in. Which is what I said last week when somebody asked me about it. They didn't file an application, but they asked me about it, and I said we haven't opted in, and they said that's not what your ordinance says. And I said, oh, let me talk to my lawyer, and I did, and my lawyer said, you have essentially opted in without actually doing it, because the ordinance says this. So it's up to you guys to decide if you want to leave it that way. When it was written, there was a lot of restrictions put in there. If you leave it in there, it has to be on Main Street, has to be street level, facing the street, can only be between the hours 9 and 5, Monday through Saturday, I believe it says. You can't be able to see the product through the window. There's a whole slug of restrictions in there. It has to have security. That's, I think, police monitored. There's all kinds of stuff in there. And as I said, it hasn't been a problem anywhere. You know, I know years ago people thought it was going to be, crime was going to go up and all that. None of that's happened. So it's really just, do you want that on Main Street or don't you?
I mean, I'm not opposed to it,
Neither am I.
But we should do it from the opt-in standpoint as opposed to, I mean, removing this language still allows us to opt in later, correct?
Well, you can always
Because if we're
change
leaving it
something.
now, we're opening the door for somebody to come and make an application.
Correct.
Yeah. So, I mean, I would be for, at a minimum, getting this out of there, and if we want to opt in, do it in a different manner, at a different time. But this would get us out of it.
I don't have a problem with a marijuana business, and I don't care where it is, really. And I think that, I agree, we can change, the wording and then revisit if we want to revisit to,
I mean, I think do we need to eliminate it?
You'd have to take
If you
this
don't,
out.
if you want to allow medical marijuana dispensaries, this is not recreational.
Yep.
This is medical only.
Yes.
If you want to allow those to locate in Bucksport, they're in the current ordinance language, it can only be on Main Street, straight facing, it was done in a very, it was 2011.
Right.
It's a very protective way of the community and only for medical. And when the town chose not to opt in on the recreational side, that was different. And at one point, you couldn't you could regulate, but you could not prohibit. And that was the medical marijuana piece. And it wasn't until the 2018 thing came along that said that you could prohibit the dispensaries. There's things you can't prohibit. You can't stop people from growing it. You can't stop those kind of things.
Caregivers can still.
But the dispensary piece, you could do it along the same lines as you did recreational. And so you already had language in because it wasn't, you didn't have an option. There had to be a provision made in the ordinance to do what the regulations said in regard to it. And so if you don't care if it's there, you don't actually have to take it out and then put it back unless you hate the rules that are in it to accompany it.
Well, it'd be nice to if we're going to leave it in, to rethink the rules of, with experience and knowledge.
But, and that would, you could have them, if you want it, end up including it, you could instead do a moratorium. It goes through the same process, giving yourself X amount of time, meaning that you wouldn't entertain any applications during this period until you had your rules in place.
I would be okay with that, because then, we're open for business. We want people to come here. It hasn't been problematic in other communities.
that they're doing really good business.
And yeah, well,
I mean,
and if we change some of these, the industrial park could be open for other aspects, which would be tax revenue. So I would probably be more in favor of the moratorium aspect and rethink the process.
That's the same time frame. That's, the language has a first reading and a second reading and a public hearing on that. But it also has to have a specific purpose, and the moratorium would be on issuing any licenses under that section for a period of X time while the council rewrites the rules for how that will, and locations for that.
that's where
I would be in the same mindset.
You think, Jim?
Oh, yeah, if you wanna go ahead and put it here in Bucksport, fine, You don't need it, but I have no problem with it at all.
What kind of motion do we need?
Yeah.
I don't know if you
To
do.
request a moratorium
Yeah.
in this section,
Because we're basically going to rewrite the ordinance, so we've got to basically start fresh, but to the moratorium piece, you've got to
that means you wouldn't
freeze
end up.
Freeze
where
what's
we're at.
possible right now.
Yep.
And I think that's the right way to go.
Yep.
And either bring it up through regulatory review and economic development, or just one.
I believe that a moratorium was how they went about it when it first came up.
Yes.
They
It
did a
is.
6 month and then with the possibility of extending it after that.
That's right.
In the meantime, my daughter could
That's right.
across the river.
So the motion in this one has to say,
A moratorium on the ordinance for a period of
Medical marijuana
Yeah, not the whole
dispensary.
ordinance.
No.
Just medical
On
marijuana
section
dispensary.
whatever, the medical marijuana.
Yeah, I'll have to write it.
okay.
I don't have anything in front of you, so you can't vote on it.
That's
Tonight's
not
the
going to have a
reading.
first reading tonight. This is going to have to be at the next meeting. It's not, people have to have something to look at.
So, next one,
Can I ask a question?
Go ahead.
So if by chance somebody calls Monday and says, your ordinance says this, and we want to open medical marijuana, since we're not in the moratorium or doing anything, they legally have the right, if they can find the space on Main Street, to do it?
Could
Yes.
they do it if we did a first reading?
yes. The ordinance hasn't been changed yet. The ordinance says they can do it. Even if we had to change the ordinance, they have, I think it's either 7 or 30 days before the ordinance takes effect. So I'd have to look. I think it's 7 days, but I might be wrong. Okay? All good? All right. The next one is the sign ordinance. I've had I've had a fair amount of corporations calling me about signs, from Dunkin' Donuts to McDonald's to Family Dollar, and they all want to know what's allowed, what's not allowed, and I point them to our sign ordinance, and they say, we've already read that, it doesn't answer our questions. It had pretty good language in it about freestanding signs, but it doesn't say anything about wall-hung signs or attached signs, that type of thing. I did a bunch of research on what other towns were doing, and I added the language here. Definition of an attached sign, it's pretty obvious. The difference between a framed sign and an unframed sign, again, I think it's pretty obvious, but then the language where the permit fee is identified in the town's approved fee schedules, that's where I think all fees should be listed. They shouldn't be listed in the individual ordinances, because you want them all in one place so that if you change things, they're all in one place. Beyond that, you can change the fee schedule, I believe, in one, is it 2 readings?
Two
for that too?
readings.
Okay, but it doesn't have to have public hearing and all that, does it? No. So then the freestanding signs, you'll see I scratched out that line, but it's really not deleted, it's in the line below. I had to reorganize how things were listed here. But I put in the maximum height, because that was a question I was asked all the time. We had a maximum height in the ordinance for signs like at the industrial park where you got multiple businesses, but we didn't have it for a freestanding sign for an individual business. So I just kept it the same, 25 feet, which is the same as Brewer and Ellsworth. A lot of people always asking me, well, does a double-faced sign count as 2 signs, or is that 1 sign? I'm like, no, that's 1 sign, but they are always asking me, so I put it in here. That's 1 sign. They wanted to know about setbacks, so I said 5 feet from the right-of-way. Again, I think I stole that from Ellsworth. But that was one that people are always asking me. And then we didn't have any definition or distinction, I guess, better word, for a home occupation like in my house versus Walgreens. Both of them could have a 100 square foot sign, and I don't think you want me having a 100 square foot sign out at my house on Jacobuck. So I've changed it to what a lot of other towns have, which is a 12 square foot sign, which is, that's a 3x4 sign. It's still a good size sign, and 6 feet high, which I don't think you want it higher than that in the neighborhoods. And then the language for attached signs has to be on the front of the building or a part of the building that's facing visible from the street. Basically, you can't obstruct stairways and openings and egress. Signs composed of individual letters without a background may be located on the edge of a roof, parapet, or on a wall. No more than 3 feet above that area to which it is affixed. It's pretty basic stuff. It's just we didn't have this stuff. And then the attached signs not to exceed minimum sign area of 2 square feet per linear foot. And that's what Orono has, that's what Brewer has, Ellsworth has. I figure if it's working for them, the stores aren't complaining, then I think it'll be fine for us. That's pretty big. And the sign cannot be greater than 80% the length of the tenant space or the building frontage, depending on the use. So if you've got a building like where Family Dollar is, US Cellular sign can't be more than 80% of their tenant space. Lighting standards, pretty basic stuff. Basically, you don't want to be blinding people's vehicles and stuff. You know, you want to have them cut off or shielded. Again, pretty clear stuff there. And then the awnings, we didn't have anything about awnings and stuff, and that's another one I get asked about. So I basically, just real basic, you have to have at least 8 feet below it. I know actually there was one on Main Street last year when I was walking to lunch one day in the summer, and my head was hitting the sign that was hanging down, so it's not really ideal. And then the minimum sign between the sign and the curb would be 2 feet, so that it's not hanging out over the road. And then last was the banner signs. And this came up last year. There was some questions about how banners should be done. So an event banner should say what the name of the event is, the date, the time, the location of the event. The sponsorship should only be identified incidentally as secondary primary purpose to the banner message. There are not a lot of towns that have an ordinance like this about banners. But I did find one in Florida that has banner poles just like us. And they had that language just like that, and they had the language that the sponsorship shall not be more than 20% of the banner face. And I liked it. I thought that made a lot of sense. I know part of the reason that business sponsorship was in there was because it's illegal to have business signage off-site in the state of Maine, and so that's why that was in there. You're allowed to have it as a secondary thing saying you're sponsoring an event, but you're not allowed to, can't have Bangor Savings Bank put a banner down there saying that would be off-site advertising. It's not allowed. But this would, like the Rod and Gun Club's got a gun show banner that's going up in a couple weeks. Their logo is on the left side, and then the rest of it is all big text, gun show, this is where, this is when. Which is what you want. You don't want it to say Bucks Mills Rod and Gun Club and all that, and then at the very bottom, oh, by the way, this is what we're doing. Thoughts, questions?
Go ahead, Rick.
What do we for the fee? Are we just striking out the $5 and just putting it in the schedule fee, or is it?
It is in the fee schedule right now. So if we want to change that, that can be done later when we do the fee schedule. Right now, I'm just taking it out of this, so we don't have it in 2 places and have 2 different numbers and that kind of thing.
So I'll make a motion to move forward Appendix H sign ordinance to the council.
Second.
All in favor?
And last but not least, I think Sue can probably speak to this better than I can. I wrote it, but basically I think they're working through the police contracts and the public safety public works contracts. This year it's a bargaining year or whatever. And one of the things that's in their contracts is how to deal with complaints from the public. And our personnel policy doesn't have anything about that for us regular non-union employees. So Sue asked that I put this in. So I wrote this up. I don't know if you've all read it. Do you want me to go through it, or you have?
I do have a question. What
Yeah.
precipitated this is just that it's not in one, it's in the other. I have a real concern when we're having a person making complaint also at the hearing that you're involving with discipline.
Oh, you mean, sorry, I was gonna say, nobody hears.
No.
No, the it came because of an inspection that was done in public safety that we were missing a definition. Yeah, it was. It was something in regard.
Ambulance, actually, we had a
Yes.
the ambulance inspection virtually where, who was it, Medicare or Medicaid, or someone said, where's your personnel policy for complaints from patients? And the police has a mandate, a state one, and the fire didn't really, or the town didn't. And the town has always come to the police department to get our forms if they get complaints.
And I got no problem with that, of public making complaints or whatever, however we do that. My concern is, when it says a hearing shall be held by the town manager, the employee concerned, and the person making the complaint.
I hear what you're saying.
You know, a personnel decision,
I think
Really
that
should be.
came from the police contract.
really.
Yeah.
I didn't write that myself.
You're standing there, Luke, it's all you get.
Well, and I would agree
I wrote
that
it,
while you may, we may at some point bring a complainant and a complained about individual together, that
Sure.
that wouldn't be part of.
But the word hearing, to me, just,
So what would you like to see different?
I would think that the supervisor, the town manager, or if it's Sean, or if it's David, or Mike, or you, dealing with an employee on a complaint, and correct me if I'm wrong, guys, but this is the way that you would investigate the complaint that came in from the public.
Absolutely.
And then you make a determination from that. You may also, you will probably talk to the complainant, but you wouldn't have everybody in there at the same time having that hearing and that discussion.
Not necessarily, no.
I mean, I can't imagine a time when somebody makes a complaint on David that he was abusive, and then you're gonna bring, you're the first one to say, I wasn't gonna talk about Mike. But then, you know, you're not gonna bring that person who's making that complaint in with David sitting right there and have an investigative hearing, I wouldn't think.
If
Why
I
don't
did
we
get
take,
that-
as I said, we took it from
Okay.
contractual language that we already had,
Okay.
which, you know, contracts are up this year, so
Yeah.
that, this all is open for discussion certainly, but we can take a look at other personnel policies.
Yeah.
There has to be a way to, something
Yeah.
standardized to deal with complaints from the public, and whether it's this or whatever, but this wouldn't necessarily, we could take a look at different language and
So you
bring
wanted
that
to
back.
just bring it back another time? There's no hurry on this one?
It's
or-
just kind of funky to me on how.
No, I
it
get your
reads.
point. You wouldn't want
Yeah.
to be the
I
person
agree.
making the complaint and facing that person.
Yeah.
Not in a hearing where, you know, he's
I
been
wouldn't want
fired
to
by
be
you
here.
or something.
Yeah.
No, I see your point there, but
To me, it reads funny, and maybe it's not. To me, I'm just trying to walk through the process, and it doesn't seem like the right verbiage, or something doesn't seem right about it. And I may be all wet on it. I mean, maybe.
No, I think you're right, but if that is in the police contract, I've never said in a hearing like that.
And I can't imagine why you would, you know.
I promise you I got it from either police or public works, one or the other. So,
Well, there's police,
Jay's
fire,
got
and public
ears.
works.
We'll find out.
yeah, so,
I think it would be better if you guys
Table that
one.
table that one, maybe.
do you want to?
okay.
Make a motion to table it?
Is that your only concern in that?
Yeah.
Did you read the rest of it? You're good with the rest of it?
Yeah, I think we need to make sure that we have
Okay.
a process, you know. The only other thing I would check on, and again, now it's semantics, but somebody making a complaint, can they make it anonymously? So if somebody writes a letter to Sue or to Sean or to you and says, hey, I got a complaint on employee XYZ, they don't sign it, are you still investigating that?
We can take anonymous complaints, but depends on which you're under. And we do state that you have to fill out the complaint and return it before we will investigate it.
Okay.
So we have paperwork.
And again, you know, you could get hammered with frivolous as we know, just somebody just sending
Right.
stuff to you that's not signed, at some point, you
Right,
gotta.
we have forms and stuff, and the initial, the cover page says this is how you file a complaint, this is what happens, and you have to return it, sign it, if you have any questions, contact the supervisor, they'll help you fill out the
Okay,
statement.
all right, yeah, I mean, because you'd want to be able to have that person be able to contact you to be able
Yeah.
to, so you can do your
So we can
investigation, right?
Yeah, you have to have somebody to interview you
Okay,
to follow up.
yeah. So there is a form that you guys use that,
Yes.
okay.
So we got a motion and a second to table this item. All in favor? Okay. Motion adjourned.
Nice job.
Motion adjourned.
Oh, yeah, second.
All in favor? Meeting adjourned.